Thank you. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to make this presentation. The first thing, this is not part of the presentation, but I will mention Bill Ring is running for district attorney. And he didn't ask me to say that. So I guess the first thing I would say is
elections are not the only democratic process we have, and we trust in you, our representatives.
You know, you can study all economics about what it would do, but what about what happens to people?
We can do whatever we want. You're exactly right, but there's a consequence to that.
Last year, the whole country experienced a serious what the fuck moment. No, not that one. Yeah, that's the guy. Here in Flagstaff, we also had a political what the fuck moment as the so-called progressive slate swept into power at City Council and the County Attorney's Office. Well, almost a sweep. So how could this happen? In the past 4 years, Flagstaff was improving, largely due to a City Council that focused on its core responsibilities, especially in paving the way for several long-neglected infrastructure projects that continue today. They didn't, however, play politics to placate a very vocal few in our community. So how did the so-called progressive slate unseat our very popular and effective mayor and incumbent council members? Easy. They used a manufactured hot-button issue and used deceptive scare tactics to sway Flagstaff voters suddenly to their side. In 2015, Core Campus, an out-of-town developer, announced plans to build The Hub, a large student housing complex in the Southside neighborhood close to NAU. Taking advantage of transect zoning enacted by the City Council in 2011 and interpreting the regional plan's forward-looking vision to promote growth in the Southside, they submitted a site plan to community development that conformed to our transect zoning codes, but also asked for a simple switch of T4 and T5 zones to fit their original building design. And that's when the Flagstaff activist class sprung into action, coming off what they saw as a victory in the case of the standard student housing complex in Plaza Vieja, in which they successfully prevented a few dozen citizens from being paid thousands of dollars to move away from an outdated trailer park. They sought now to keep the anti-development momentum going, and so Stand Up for Flagstaff was born. So their first strategy was to declare that the city's planning and zoning staff misread the transect zoning code and approved the hub site plan by mistake. They insinuated that our staff, of all these qualified people, couldn't interpret our small town zoning code, and also that they didn't perform an adequate site plan review.
Staff did not perform site planning review according to the chapter that site planning review appears in, picking up on Member Lovin's question, how do you do compatibility review without getting out from behind the desk? Desktop is not where you do compatibility review. In the field is where you do compatibility review. Staff did not perform that function.
This assertion was repeated to the Planning and Zoning Commission, to the City Council, to the City Council again, to the Board of Adjustment, and finally to the County Superior Court earlier this year. In each case, their appeals were denied and the zoning code upheld. The next step was to scare the people of Flagstaff during an election year, again pushing the false hope that the hub could be stopped altogether, and now adding the narrative that those on council who upheld the zoning code and private property rights were purposely selling out Flagstaff to out-of-town developers.
So there's a lot of knowledge about what's going on, and people are pretty excited about opposing it. So I just want to let you know that. It is voting season after all.
First, they misrepresented the size of the hub itself, using images and models that depicted the structure as one giant whole building, with an inside area matching the property line, as if it were the Walgreens distribution center, but like 5 stories tall, despite the availability of artist renderings and blueprints showing the interior open courtyard, and the tiered design of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. Many in Flagstaff were already convinced that the hub was indeed a monstrosity that didn't fit into Southside, and that somehow our city council could and should legally stop it.
It is a sad thing when developers can swoop in and do just about anything they want on a commercially zoned property, regardless of the wishes of likely a majority of Flagstaff residents.
But I am wholeheartedly against this massive eyesore that wants to be approved in my beloved community, and I promise to do all that I can so this project will not come to fruition.
A vote for this project will be a vote to invite future development to disregard the regional plan, its purpose, and the work of the community that helped create it. A vote that denies this zoning amendment and sends the report back will be interpreted as supporting the well-being, health, and safety of the people you represent.
Please do what is best for Flagstaff. Reject the hub and review the transect zoning process.
This is environmental racism taking place with the hub.
The opportunity to oppose this mistaken staff judgment will be greatest if you vote no this evening.
You don't have the responsibility to approve a project with such a demonstrated lack of community support. You're our elected officials, and you do have a fiduciary responsibility to represent based on our input.
It's time for everybody to vote, because we need to cut the head off of the snake. That's what we need to do.
Next came the campaigning, as the progressive slate and stand-up attorney Bill Ring all began to echo the populist message of elect us to stop the hub. Preserve historic neighborhoods.
And I just want to say that I feel very fortunate to live in a city where my values align very closely with the people, with the community. We care about protecting our neighborhoods from inappropriate developments. We care about open space. The core attorney would have you think that it's just a slam dunk, really easy issue. Well, I'd also say that Mr. Ring made some pretty strong arguments too.
The initiative to come up with a plan and have foresight for these student housing and know where to put them, where there's going to be the least amount of disruption by the community into the community. We can't be putting them in historic neighborhoods, and we need to do a better job of being on top of this.
It is clear to even a layperson that the city's transect code was inappropriately interpreted when it came to the hub.
But one of the things we were looking at in council was how do we encourage redevelopment, but how do we do it in a way that's actually going to provide redevelopment in a neighborhood that needs redevelopment, but keeps and maintains the current historical structures, not structures, but sense of place. And how do we transition and make it look like the rest of the neighborhood, so to speak, right? And I can tell you that I personally think that staff misread the code, at least the way I read the code. And that's really what's at the heart of the conversation when it comes to this whole hub issue. The fact that this council, I want to be clear, I voted against the rezoning. So did 2 other members of council. By voting against the rezoning, we actually decreased that project by 10%. I want to make sure that people understand that. We decreased the project by 10% rather than letting it go forward the way it was. The hub is in an inappropriate place. It's inappropriate. It's destroying a historic neighborhood. We haven't talked about gentrification at all of any of the historic neighborhoods and how we're going to prevent that, even though there's ways to do that. We haven't talked about things like a worker center and where that may or may not be. We haven't talked about any of that as a community, at least not as a city council. That's one of the things that I'm hoping to bring to the table.
Bill Ring's agenda-driven campaign for county attorney was especially transparent. Ring campaigned as an advocate for historic neighborhoods and keeping an eye on growth in the county, while his opponent, Gary Perlmutter, focused on actual law enforcement issues, like reducing violent crime and limiting sentences for nonviolent offenders, otherwise known as issues related to the county attorney's office. Even the Daily Sun was helpful, composing a loaded question about community participation framed only in the context of the hub. Time after time, the message was clear. Mayor Jerry Neighbors and council members Jeff Orovitz and Carla Brewster, along with Scott Overton, who wasn't up for re-election, voted to approve the hub zoning change because they don't care about preserving small-town historic Flagstaff. Despite the glaring facts of our zoning code, and not to mention private property rights, the people of Flagstaff were sufficiently duped into believing in a false choice of voting in 2016 to either preserve Flagstaff or let our town be destroyed by greedy out-of-town interests enabled by the wrong people on council. So we voted to preserve Flagstaff. And what did we get?
I, Jim McCarthy,
I, Jamie Whelan,
I, Cora Levins,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the Flagstaff City Council member
Flagstaff City Council member
the office of the mayor of the city of Flagstaff.
according to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I want to say that my approach will be notably different in this new era for the city of Flagstaff. I want to encourage civil discord. I want to encourage your questions, encourage your answers, and encourage thoughtful dialogue. So I think you guys are clapping because you think that I agree with it, and I want to be crystal clear. I'm actually really disappointed right now in our community. I'm very disappointed in our community.